Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm bringing you guys a brand new track review video where I get to talk about several recently released songs that I happen to hear and have some opinions on. Pretty much just going to be sharing my general opinions on these, and if you happen to disagree, it's perfectly fine. These are just my own personal takes on these songs. The first one I want to talk about here today is this new track from Sum 41, Out for Blood. And I was pretty interested to see what this band was going to go with their newest single, considering their last album was a bit of a comeback album for them, and I thought it was a pretty decent one at that. I was interested to see if they were gonna play it safe with the new single, or if they were gonna try to experiment a bit more. Overall, I would say that this new track leans more towards playing it safe. I don't think most of this track is particularly new or groundbreaking for this group necessarily. However, I will say that for the most part, this track is pretty solid and it is decently enjoyable. I do particularly like the guitar solo that pops up on this track. This solo is very furious, very energy-filled. It really is the highlight of this song. And despite the fact that I feel like the rest of the song isn't necessarily as ear-catching, this solo instantly grabs my attention every time I'm listening to this track. It's overall just a pretty fantastic solo. Easily the highlight of the song. And yeah, I mean, the solo didn't have to go this hard. I'm just really happy that it did. The rest of the track, as I have kind of alluded to by this point, is pretty acceptable overall. I think it's decently catchy. However, I don't think that there's a whole ton in the rest of this track that I would say is really groundbreaking for Sum 41 or new for them, or even them kind of doing what they've done before and really excelling at it, with the exception of the guitar solo, as I said before. For the most part, it's just your bread and butter Sum 41. If you like Sum 41, you'll probably like this track to some extent. If you've never cared for this band, you probably won't care for this track either. Overall, I think it's a pretty acceptable first single for whatever they're going to be releasing, hopefully later this year. Yeah, I just think it's a decent song overall with a pretty great solo. The next track I'm going to talk about is this new single from Beck, Saw Lightning. This is coming off of his new album Hyperspace, which is going to be coming out later this year. And I was kind of interested to see what this track would have in store for it, considering that Beck's last album, Colors, was one that lots of people had some pretty different opinions on, with lots of people really disliking it for how pop-focused it was. But at the same time, there was a sizable portion, I guess, of Beck's fan base that thought it was pretty decent for that very same reason. Personally, I thought it was a decent record, not one of Beck's best albums, not one of his most groundbreaking either or anything like that, but as far as pop rock goes, it was a pretty solid listening experience. So I was kind of interested to see if on this new single of his he was going to continue down the road of a more pop-focused sound, or if it was just going to be something entirely new and different. And this is kind of both in a sense. This track has a very danceable feel to it. It's very upbeat, kind of poppy too in that regard. However, there are elements to this track that are certainly a bit different than anything that was going on Colors. I do feel like this track is maybe a bit more out there and a bit stranger than anything that appeared on that project. However, overall, I don't really feel like this song necessarily sticks the landing as nicely as it needed to, because I think there's a lot of potential present here on the song, but not a lot of it really comes across and ends up sounding all that great in the final version of the track itself. Overall, I'm just kind of indifferent towards this track. I don't particularly like it or dislike it. I'm just kind of somewhere in the middle, really. I think the instrumental to this track and the production is pretty okay. It's pleasant to listen to, but it's not anything that I think is super standout. I think Beck's performance on the track is also pretty okay for the most part. I do kind of wish that the chorus of the track had a bit more going on in it. As it is right now, it's kind of simplistic, a little bit silly too. I kind of feel like it would have worked more on an album like Colors, but with all this other stuff going on in this track that I feel like could have been used to make a more interesting song, I'm kind of disappointed that the chorus is as stripped back and simple as it is. Pharrell's contributions to this track and the production I already talked about, but his vocal contributions to the track I think are just okay as well. I mean, the track is just kind of underwhelming to me, honestly. It doesn't really do a whole ton. And I do feel like the track also runs a bit long as well. Like, right around the time I'm starting to think that this track should be wrapping up because it's really given me all it needs to, I realize that I'm only like halfway through the song, unfortunately. So yeah, this is an okay-ish song, I guess. It didn't really do a whole ton for me. It's not a track I would revisit on its own. Maybe hearing it in the context of whatever record Beck has coming around the corner, it will make a bit more sense. But on its own, yeah, I was just kind of indifferent towards this one. Next up, the next song I want to talk about is this new collaborative track between The Weeknd, SZA, and Travis Scott. Power is Power, and this song is coming off of this like Game of Thrones related album. I don't watch Game of Thrones, so I'm not really sure what importance this album has to the show. If it's like the soundtrack or something, I don't really know. I only checked out the song because I'm interested in the artist that we're doing this track. And overall, this is kind of an underwhelming collaborative project between these three artists. I do like all three artists involved here, but I feel like they could have done so much more than what we get here on this track. When it comes to The Weeknd and the instrumental here on this track, I kind of am getting like flashbacks to the song Pray For Me from that Black Panther album that came out last year. The beat on this track is very similar sounding, and The Weeknd's performance here is pretty similar as well because he's doing a more pop-focused sound, which personally, I do like it when The Weeknd is doing his pop stuff more than his moodier R&B type stuff. I know I'm in the minority on that opinion, but I do prefer his pop material. But I'm not on this track. I feel like this track is just a bit too redundant, especially when compared to Pray For Me, which is a track I liked overall. But instead of having a pretty solid collaboration with Kendrick Lamar like that track has, this track has some pretty underwhelming performances, not just from The Weeknd himself, but from SZA and Travis Scott as well. SZA's performance is the better of the two. When it comes to between her and Travis Scott, she does a pretty okay job here, I guess. I mean, her vocals sound nice enough in this track, they just don't really stick with me overall. It just kind of feels like a phoned-in performance. And Travis Scott on here is just so forgettable. Like, there's very little to his performance that sticks with me at all. Like, as I'm sitting here right now, I'm having a hard time trying to remember what he really did on this track, but, you know, aside from providing some ad-libs. Like, I just can just remember his voice being there, but I can't remember anything that he really said or did that was exciting here on this track. Overall, this is a really disappointing collaborative song. All three artists involved are really just kind of on autopilot here, either doing stuff that they've done before, or really playing it safe, or just trying their best to blend into the background. The beat here isn't anything special either, and the lyrics on this track, I kind of get the impression that they're trying to tie it into like the overall tone of Game of Thrones. I'm guessing, like I said, I have not watched Game of Thrones or read the books that it's based on, so I don't know anything about it except that I believe it's like fantasy. So the track kind of has some lyrics that are trying to be like fantastical and stuff, it seems. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong on that because I haven't seen the show and I can't tie it to that. But if that is what they were going for here in the lyrics, they're doing it on such a surface level that it's not interesting or exciting at all. So yeah, I mean, only check this out if you are a really big fan of any of the artists involved. And even if you are a really big fan, you may not enjoy this track all that much because it's pretty underwhelming. Next, in the final track I want to talk about here today is the new Injury Reserve track, Koruna and Lime. Overall, this is a fantastic track, and after hearing this song and a lot of the other singles they dropped from their upcoming record, I'm really excited to hear what they're going to be doing on this upcoming project of theirs. I have a feeling this might be one of my favorite albums of the year, if these singles are any indication. This track, as I just said, is really fantastic. I love the beat on this thing. I love how driving and forceful it is, and I just love how they're rapping over it as well. They make it sound so effortless and smooth, despite the fact that this isn't your your typical beat by any stretch of the imagination. I also really love a lot of the lyrics on this thing, especially at one part where he's talking about how the preachy rappers and how they sound like a TED Talk or something along those lines. I thought that was pretty funny and relatable, I guess, as someone who listens to a lot of music. And I also like how the track is pretty short, pretty condensed, but it doesn't really overstay its welcome either. It hits you really hard, and then it's over right as, right before it would really start to get repetitive or uninteresting, I feel. It's overall just a really banging, awesome, fantastic track, and as I said before, I'm really excited to hear what this new album from these guys are going to sound like, because some of these singles that they've been dropping are really great. Some of my favorite tracks of the year so far. Yeah, definitely check out this song if you're a fan of Injury Reserve. If you're a hip-hop fan at all, you're just looking for some good music, check out this song because it is great. And with that said, that concludes today's track review segment. If you happen to have any opinions on any of these songs that are different than my own, it's perfectly fine. In fact, feel free to leave your own opinions in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more music-related content. Things like album reviews, more track reviews, things like that. So if you enjoy that kind of content, make sure you subscribe. Thank you for watching once again, and stay golden.